Hello everybody, it's vanburman here, and today I want to talk to you about an issue which may well affect quite a lot of you, to be honest, and might affect more people than you actually realise. And that is the the culture, shall we say, of 0 hour contracts. Now, effectively, a 0 hour contract is your contract of employment, so they agree to employ you and give you a job. However, they don't guarantee any hours, and you're therefore not exactly required to take or to make or to do any hours to a certain, and then they will offer you work from there as what is, I guess, effectively overtime. Of course, it's not. It's just the normal your normal allowance of whatever it is that you're asked to do. So, for me, for example, my 2 jobs while I was at university were both 0 hour contracts. Now, in that situation, it is perfectly acceptable and perfectly reasonable to have 0 hour contracts. Because I'm at university and I can't do shifts every day, for example, there's going to be some days that I can't work, some times that I can't work, and therefore having a 0 hour contract makes it flexible for both the employer and the employee. Now the problem is that 0 hour contracts aren't just exclusive to students. It goes throughout the working spectrum. I mean, I have been in jobs before that was a 0 hour contract, but that was after university. That wasn't because I didn't want to do the hours, it's because they didn't want to have to guarantee me the hours. And being on a 0 hour contract as well, it of course effectively means that your employer can get rid of you whenever they want to. Not dismissal, because they don't even have to dismiss you. The thing they can do is just not offer you any work. You've got a 0 hour contract and giving you 0 hours. I have no work. You're still employed, you're still working, and basically then it's up to the person to leave, effectively, to say, right, well, I'm on a 0 hour contract, but I'm not getting any work, so I want to leave. And a lot of you are probably in these types of contracts. My cousin, for example, works on a fish and chip van. I mean, he's only 16, so that's fine. So he will be on a 0 hour contract as well. He is needed as and when, and gets paid, for that particular shift. The thing that I dislike about all this is that employers who have this structure then complaining about staff not being reliable, not caring about the job, not working to the fullest of their abilities. And in all fairness, there's no incentive for them to do it. I mean, they could be gone at any moment. There's zero security in a 0 hour contract. It is pretty much all for the employer. Now, yes, of course, it gets people a job, and it gets people off benefits, but does it really solve it in the long term? No, I don't think so. The whole idea of employers having to give staff a notice, should be a good enough reason. You can have different types of contracts that state at any point that the employer wants to terminate the agreement between you and them. They have to give you 1 week's notice. That's 1 week's worth of wage. That's not a lot, let's face it, for the staff to have even just a tiny bit of security. And that's what I really dislike about employment contracts and employment law, is that there is very little safeguards on the employee. Now, when an employee is given a proper contract, a full-time permanent employee contract, then they have a lot of protections. There are things like the right to the same benefits as other people in the company that do the same type of work that they do. Generally, they're paid better. Obviously, there are other things. If you're on fixed contracts, then that's another different one. You're employed for a certain amount of time. We want to give you a 4-month contract. Even though, this comes from companies that will want people that aren't... They come from companies that aren't looking to get rid of you. They want to keep you. I can't really talk about specifics, but there's a company that I know, and they're employing a guy that's been there over a year, and as far as they're concerned, they want him to stay for as long as possible. Yet they still give him fixed term contracts. Now, why is this? Because in the fixed term, if they're not happy for some reason or they find someone better, they can get rid of him straight away. There is no recourse. The only thing that is sort of any sort of safeguard is that after 3 years of continuous fixed contracts, he becomes a permanent employee by proxy, basically. And they have to unless there is a really good reason not to. So you've got all that sort of stuff to consider, but the 0-hour contract breeds this. I think it breeds this disparity between the employee and the employer, and it doesn't give you any confidence in your staff, in your employers, and overall, I think it probably decreases the effectiveness of your business. Yes, you do have to choose which staff you're going to give temporary or permanent contracts for, and if there's a temporary job going, then that's fair enough. You give them to it on a temporary basis, on a fixed term basis. You'd give them a month, say we got you guaranteed work for a month, rather than saying here's a 0-hour contract, we'll get you in as and when we need you, which can work. Like I've said, students are a great example of that, but a lot of people need more than that. Everyone needs to get a good wage, of course, which brings me on to my other point, which is in the UK we have a minimum wage which is £6.31, and then we also have what's called the living wage. Now, this isn't an official, it's sort of a semi-official hourly wage that someone needs to get in order to be able to live, basically. So it basically takes into account average rent, average food bill, average gas, electric, water, that sort of stuff, and it works out how much an hour you need to be able to live well, or live without scraping by. And that statistic was £7.68, I think. Let me have a look. I did have it up a minute ago. I've forgotten already. Alright, £7.65. £7.65. So that's £1.34 above what the minimum wage is. Now, that is quite a substantial amount, to be honest, and I think that there is too much of a gap between the minimum wage and that. I know the minimum wage is set to go up again, I think, this year, but I'd like to see it basically just jump up to the £7 mark. Was a fly. So you can bridge the gap between the minimum wage and the living wage, because really, ideally, an ethical company, a company that wants to run itself correctly and look after its employees, because as a business you do have to invest a lot in your employees if you want good work and you want to be successful. And I would basically advocate the living wage that every company should try or aspire to be able to give their staff. And you find that a lot of people are willing to do it. I mean, even if it was... I could even see it being better if, you had a company that was just paying minimum wage and then decided to enact a bonus scheme. I'm not too keen on bonus schemes, but you could say, well, if you do well enough, then we'll bump it up to the living wage. And, that is... £1.30 is a lot, but it would give a lot more incentive for people to do a better job, because the living wage is very, very attractive, and lots of people will be, when you look at the bottom end, lots of people would be very lucky or feel very privileged in order to be able to get that living wage. And a lot of people do have dependencies, they have bills and debts and all sorts of things that they need to pay. So it's not just about roof over your head and food on the table. There are other bits to it as well, and people don't just want to work in a sense. A lot of people work for what is effectively £5 a week, and that doesn't help the economy at all. Someone's got £5 spare, they're probably just going to spend an extra £5 on their food bill, aren't they? They're not going to be going out and doing things and spending money. So they're my two issues, really. the minimum wage is too low. Well, yeah, it's too low, basically. And 0-hour contracts are generally a bad idea. Now, the government's only just come out and said that they don't think it's that overly that useful. But quite frankly, a lot of people who want full-time work and are getting full-time hours are on 0-hour contracts. Now, that to me is perverse. I think that there should be something in there that says if you're working over X many hours for X amount of weeks and you're on a 0-hour contract, that it automatically by proxy gets boosted up to either a fixed term contract or to a permanent contract for those hours. But at the minute it's just stupid. I mean, I worked at the stadium and I worked up to 60 hours a week for a prolonged period, and of course, what was I on? A 0-hour contract, which means, I get a text one morning saying boss doesn't want you in, or boss isn't going to offer. Well, it should have been boss doesn't want to offer you any more hours, and that was it, gone, just like that. No notice, no anything. So all of a sudden, I've gone from being able to support myself to having absolutely zilch. That's the way the world works at the minute, and there are some changes in there that I think need to be addressed by the government. But to do that, it costs lots of money. Business is going to hire less people, potentially more unemployed. It's a very difficult thing. But these are definitely the things we should aspire for. Also, this is and just an extra bit to that. I personally like to see anyone that's working minimum wage, so £6.31 an hour or whatever it goes up to, working 37.5 hours, which is full-time hours. I don't think those people should be paying tax at all, because at the minute they're paying about £250 of tax. To be honest, I don't think the government's got any right to take any money from those people that are literally scraping by on the, what is the minimum for full-time work. So anyway, that's my opinion on that, but it's all pie in the sky. Of course, we've got an election next year, so all this stuff will come out, and it will be spoken about as well. It's not very rare that I talk about an issue which Labour keep going on about, but the living wage issue it's not going to go away. It is important, and people that work hard and work well for a company and dedicate themselves at least deserve the minimum wage, the living wage, in my opinion. Anyway, guys, I've got that off my chest. I can go back to watching Top Cat, or start watching Top Cat. Anyway, I'll see you very soon, guys. Goodbye.